Welcome to the Ask April Porter podcast, where franchisee performance meets real-world business strategy. I'm April Porter, attorney, former judge and multi-unit franchisee, and the authority on franchisee performance. Each week, I share actionable insights, proven strategies, and inspiring conversations with top entrepreneurs and franchise leaders, all to help you grow your franchise or small business to achieve what I call swag: sanity, wealth, and gratitude. Success without sacrifice. To claim your swag, apply these hard-earned lessons from seasoned entrepreneurs. We're going to do that now. Let's dive in. This week, we're introducing you to another titan of business, Russ Hawkins, the president and CEO of Agilence, a leading loss prevention and operations intelligence platform used by retailers, grocers, and restaurants to protect profit and improve performance. Welcome to the show, Ross. We're excited to have you.
Well, thank you, April. Thank you so much. And thank you for that promotion to being a titan. Much appreciated.
Well, I think that's what we all strive for when we become entrepreneurs, right? I think everyone has this vision of an entrepreneur as someone who really is running an organization from at the top, and they're not stuck in the day to day, and they're not overworking, spending too many hours in the business. That's what we think entrepreneurship is before we get into it. And then, of course, in the early days, there is a lot of the grind in order to get to a place where you can really, really feel like you have a team supporting you that can take on a lot of that grunt work, and you can be more strategic and lead from the top. And I think that that's what you've done here with your company.
Absolutely. I think one of the main drivers for me, and I think for a lot of people, is you want to control your own destiny. Entrepreneurs want to control their own destiny. They don't necessarily want to be executing on somebody else's vision or ideas. And you can choose to put all the hours in. You can choose to burn the candle. And the main thing is, though, you get to control your own destiny, right? Or a main thing, maybe not the main thing. And we all want to make money too, of course.
Of course. And we love the people who really enjoy putting in the hours, because as entrepreneurs, we need those dedicated individuals who are more comfortable in the employee role and are like geniuses at that. That's how we are able to serve more of our customers at a higher level. So it all works as one giant complementary organism.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And the other comment that I'll make on that is it takes all kinds of people, right? There are people who want to be in the vanguard. There want to people that want to work, the long hours, and you want so-called A players, but the world isn't full of A players. There's all kinds of players. And everybody needs to work, and everybody needs to make a living and pay the bills. And so one of the challenges of an entrepreneur, in my opinion, is how do you combine all of those things? How do you get the most out of everybody, regardless of what kind of motivation they have?
100%. And what I think small business owners are finding is they get into small business ownership, and typically that first jump in is maybe more of an emotional decision, right? That desire to control your own destiny, maybe even the desire to be a better boss than the one that you're leaving as an employee. And then over time, you start to realize that emotion only gets you so far, and you got to bring in some more hard data, some hard facts to really make the business run like an engine. And I think that's probably where you come into play now with what you're currently doing, is helping business owners really understand data and how to use it to their advantage.
That's absolutely true. I mean, April, we're in a world now where every day there's more data. Some people call it data exhaust. I don't really like that metaphor. I think it's data intake. But we're generating more and more and more data. The world is going to a software-driven world, and whether you're a franchisee in a single location or multiple locations, increasingly you're either being provided with tools or you're adopting tools on your own to help you run the business better. And all of these tools generally provide data or create data. And so my message is very simple, which is that understand what you have to work with, and don't ignore it. Use the data that you've got to help you make better data-driven decisions, better fact-based decisions that'll improve your business. I think it's important for any kind of business of any size to do those kinds of things.
Well, that's one of the things we talk about inside Secret Sauce, which is our business education and executive coaching platform, is really helping people demystify data, overcome intimidation around data so that they can use it to better drive their business decisions. But typically what we find is that, left-brained people, people who are left-brain dominant, they're excited about like learning the data and getting in there and understanding how to use it for their businesses. But the right-brain people are just like, it's annoying, it's frustrating, it feels overwhelming. It's like, how do I interpret all these different numbers? And it's almost, I think, like a disbelief that the numbers would help you drive business because right brain people are so creative and run things from their heart that it seems like, no, no, I need to serve more. I need to do more of these things. So, how is it that you figured out how to fill that gap for both right and left brain people?
Well, I think I mean, absolutely there are those kinds of people, but I think of it more as a continuum than a black and white situation. So, there may be people that are right brain that are, dominant right brain, but underneath they've got some left brain in them for the most
Yes.
part, and maybe the same way with the left brain people. So, what we try to do is we try to simplify the data. We try to make the data easily understood. We make a software product, but you can do this the kind of things that I'm talking about, just using your own tools or generic tools like Excel and others. It's a matter of understanding what you have, what it potentially can tell you, and then focusing on the things that are the most meaningful and taking actions as a result of what you're learning from the data. I like to think of it in four ways. I mean, how do I increase sales, right? So there's data elements that will help you increase sales. How do I protect margins, right? How do I reduce food costs? And, unfortunately, sometimes it's identifying the silent partners that you have in the business, which everybody unfortunately has to deal with. Um, the third area I like to think about is your customer set and how do you get the best out of your interactions with customers to improve your brand, even if it's a brand of your franchisee of a larger brand, and you can have an identity of your own. So that's number three, and then streamlining that experience that the customer has. So those are kind of the four buckets that I like to think about as ways to use data. And those things, I think, whether you're right brain or left brain, those things, you can resonate to those things. You want if you're running a restaurant, you can understand why those four things are important.
100%. And restaurants is one of the main types of businesses that you all work with. I love what you said you know earlier off air about figuring out where the margin is leaking. And I think that's something that people don't necessarily consider is when we're talking about business strategy, a lot of times it feels like it has to be a big change or a big business strategy instead of just identifying where there might be a slow leak that could make a big impact if you get it plugged up. Can you talk about maybe some examples of where people might have leaking margins that they're just unaware of?
Yeah, so leaking margins is that's I think of margin optimization, right? So there's both reducing the amount of leakage, but also creating opportunities to get more margin, right? So you want to obviously drive top line revenue. You want to make sure that a big example that I would give you is making sure that your limited time offers are working effectively. You know, these limited time offers are often they're created by if you're a franchisee, they're created by some marketing leader back in the headquarters, and it's really theoretical, right? It says, well, if we do this, then this will be the impact. My experience has been is that sometimes you don't really realize what's actually happening until certainly days, but oftentimes weeks after these LTOs are implemented. And so wouldn't it be great if I knew immediately, I knew that same day whether these limited time offers are in fact driving what they're doing, right? Because we're using them as loss leaders to drive other sales that are higher margin sales. And if that's not actually happening, then the sooner you know about that, the better, and you can make changes and make adjustments to the strategy. In our world today, with third party ordering and delivery systems and ordering and delivery partners, There's an example of all kinds of data that's coming in that we didn't have, 10 years ago. So are these actually being effective? Is it driving loyalty to your brand? Is it driving loyalty to your specific locations? Understanding how that customer experience is happening, how that customer experience is creating a positive perception of you is important to understand whether you should be partnering with this partner or that partner or a third partner. Unfortunately, the other part of margins is making sure that you understand whether your people are really your partners or are they your silent partners. And by that I mean they're taking margin off the top that otherwise could have been delivered to you. An example of that I would give in the restaurant business is, are you applying discounts correctly? Most companies give discounts to, service people, maybe to the elderly. So making sure that your frontline people are appropriately applying discounts and not stacking discounts and those kinds of things, which is, immediate impact to the bottom line. Labor cost is another thing, making sure that you're matching your likely revenues to the staffing that you have. And so what is it? That's looking at your historical data, looking at the calendar, looking at the weather in some cases, if you really want to get sophisticated, and trying to make sure that you match your labor cost to the revenue generation. And then,
Now
of
let's
course,
talk
food
about
costs.
I'm sorry, food costs was the last one?
The food costs, yeah, is one of the biggest. How many fries am I throwing in the bin versus into the customer's bag? I want to know that kind of thing. And I want to keep track of it. I want to get more efficient in the way that I am sourcing and preparing the food and trying to minimize waste.
Okay, now as you talk about this, I know the objections from the people we work with because this sounds very tedious and it sounds somewhat overwhelming. Like, how am I supposed to count the number of fries in the bin versus in the person's bag? And then how am I supposed to get these employees who are typically high school and college age and, you know, they come and go, there's a lot of turnover. How do I get people trained to do that? So I'm sure you have a trick up your sleeve to make this easier. Please enlighten us.
Well, the reality is you've got data sources that can help you, right? Your POS system, first of all, is going to keep track of what the deliverable, what went out the door and was charged for, right? And you should be able to tap into that depending upon what kind of system, and it varies across franchisees. Some franchisees have a corporate requirement, the franchisor dictates what POS system you use. Some do not, and you're entitled to do what you want. But I think you need to be very careful. If you're making the decision yourself, you need to be very careful about the partner that you're working with and making sure that you've got a really good handle about what's going out the door. So that's one set of data that you can get. Then the question is what's coming in the door, right? So you've got product being shipped in, you're receiving it, you know what's coming in, and the difference between those two things over time is what's going in the trash, right? And so the concept is relatively easy. It may take a little bit of work up front to identify the correct elements of these data sources, but once you've identified them and you systematically collect that information and either do it with a product like ours or do it in a spreadsheet, then it becomes easier and easier. And then you can bring your associates into the discussion. You can explain to them what the importance is. I agree, turnover is a huge problem. But when I started out in the industry, I actually worked at one of the big burger companies, and they did incentives. They made incentives to help us do the right thing. And so there again is another data source, right? How are individual people performing? One of the things I like to talk about is upsells, right? One of the ways to increase margin is to increase the top line. If you increase the top line, you're going to increase the margin. Well, how do you increase the margin? Well, you incent your people. One of the things you can do is you can incent your people to upsell. So I want to sell that dessert. I want to sell maybe if I'm in a lunch place that also sells desserts or those kinds of things. Maybe you want to sell a bagel for tomorrow morning. And if you look at the POS system, we've got data, right? We know who's logged in. We know we can associate the employee numbers with actual transactions, and it's relatively simple, I think, to put a summary together of people that are meeting the customer at the front line, look at their performance on upsells over time and compare them to each other and then use that as a training tool. So we often help our customers kind of set a standard and then look at how people are performing against that standard and use it as a coaching tool for people that are underperforming, right? If effectively what you want to do is you want to praise the overperformers and coach the underperformers. And if you do that within, you can't have a million objectives. You have a small number of objectives. You have a clear way of gathering the data, and then you use it constantly as a feedback loop for the people. And over time, it gets better. Now, of course, that is impacted by the turnover that you might have, but that's the life we live in.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're diving into pretty deep to help entrepreneurs and franchisees optimize is AI.
Yes,
How are you all using AI? Because a lot of what you just said, as you're saying it, like, oh, the owner can do this, the owner can do that. My brain's rolling, and it's like, our AI can do this, our AI can do that, right? And help interpret some of this data to give hard facts that are ready for the decision to be made off of.
absolutely.
So how are you guys using AI in conjunction with your software? Or maybe you're not yet, but you see where that's going?
Well, we're using it in a number of ways, and so let me talk a little bit about how we're using it. But I'd also like to talk just a little bit about how an individual owner could use it as well. What we're doing is multifold. First of all, we build software. We're increasingly using AI agents to actually write the software. One of the challenges I have right now is that I have about 40 engineers. Most engineers got into engineering because they're creative people and they love to write code. In the AI world, though, they're going to be doing less code writing, right? And they're going to be doing a lot more coaching about code. So that is a little bit of a challenge that we have. But what we're trying to do is elevate the skill at prompting for an individual to get the same level of satisfaction out of it that they get out of actually writing the code. But that's very unique to me as a software company. On the customer satisfaction side and the kinds of things that we're building into our products is the ability for a very easy way for the users, in this case, we would be talking about the cashiers or the store managers, to note things, right? So transaction that went well, not just noted, went well, maybe didn't go well, and then feed all that into your AI engine. Yeah, and there's lots of them now. I mean, I think we're in the early stages. There's so many options today. You kind of have to pick one to work with, right? But feed all of that information into it and ask the AI to identify trends and ask the AI to identify options, or even these questions that I'm talking about in terms of upselling performance and limited time offer benefits. The AI can do the AI can do it, but it's not going to do it by itself, and it needs to be supervised. And so as a store owner or a store manager, you do need to invest a little bit of time, and you've got to be willing to kind of trust, right? AI requires trust. Now, trust is earned, not given, and I would encourage everybody not to trust. Don't trust AI, not at first anyway. If you keep using it, you keep feeding it information out of your POS system, out of your receiving system, and then ask it to try to identify anomalies, to ask it to identify differences. For example, in the French fry bin thing, you know, we can develop a pattern. We know what the average serving size is. We know how many of those serving sizes we did. We know what we ordered on the other side. Pump those things into AI, ask it to calculate what's missing out of that. And I think that that's absolutely viable. We are right at the beginning of that, April. I mean, we're starting to think, frankly, of kind of revamping our entire software product, assuming that people are going to prefer to ask natural language questions rather than having to, type out queries in a database format, or having to even learn things like AI. I mean, so excuse me, learn things like like Excel, right? Not everybody is an expert on Excel. Excel can be very, very complicated. It can be very, very easy. And I think AI can help you crawl up these learning curves very, very, very quickly. And it's going to be a little bit of hit or miss, at least for now. But I think it has great, great promise for everyone. You just got to get in there with both feet. We have a person that's not technical at all that works in our customer success organization, very, very much afraid of technology, very much afraid of AI, and was reluctant to use it. But we gave that individual a project to do and basically forced them, push them out of the nest, if you will. Sometimes you got to push your associates, you got to push your store managers out of the nest. And our experience has been that once people kind of get in there, they realize that they were afraid for the wrong reasons, that, that they were going to be overwhelmed or they were going to look dumb. And what they end up finding out is that this stuff is actually pretty helpful and you can get some self-esteem for using it and figuring out how to make the stuff happen. So it does take some time, and we're really at the beginning of a new age as far as AI goes. But yes, I believe it can solve many of these problems. It can talk many of the things that we're doing today with our hard coded stuff. We expect to be able to be able to do in a conversational manner with the customers and enable them to just interact in a very natural way it makes the data more accessible.
Yes. And just a quick note on that. And Russ, you might not be aware, but I started my career as an attorney. I am an attorney and I'm also a business strategist.
My
So
condolences.
when we're talking about this topic, the one word of caution I would give is do not put your proprietary private information, particularly trademarked or copyrighted, into the AI models that are the most popular because they all use your information to train the model, which puts it out on open source and it dilutes your copyright, it dilutes your trademark, it may dilute your protections entirely. The courts haven't taken a look at that yet and decided. But we all know, like, if you have something trademarked and you just let anybody use it without the trademark and you give it away, then you no longer can claim rights to it. You've given those up. And that's essentially what you're doing with AI. So you've got to be careful as to what you're feeding in, or at least let me rephrase that. You do need to be careful what you're feeding in. But that's why we went with Core Brain, and our infrastructure is built on Core Brain, and it's Business Vault Key, and it does not train the model. Like, it's a closed loop vault. It's not built on ChatGPT. It's not built on Claude. It's was built from the ground up, totally closed, so that everything is protected. And it's specifically for businesses at a nine figure. It's trained on all business knowledge at nine-figure levels. So it's very specialized, it's a specialist. And what you're talking about, Russ, with like being able to put it in there, 100%, you should be able to put it in there. And I like, because we're so involved in AI, I'm going through and thinking, so if you do have the tool key, just for anybody listening, if you have the tool key, you could put this into the super intelligence brain, the CFO brain, and through a combination of those, it is going to tell you exactly where to how to use the data and where to plug the leaks in the margins, or where to make adjustments and help you interpret that. So you got to get the data first. You got to get the data first, right? And then you can use the tools to help you interpret the data. For those of you that are just stepping into interpreting the data, I think that's a really great avenue. For those of you that maybe are more seasoned in interpreting a data, you probably already have a really great process in place to do that.
Yep. No, I
So,
think that's absolutely great advice. Great advice.
yeah. So what's next on the horizon for you, Russ?
Well, I think we're talking about it right now. AI. I mean, we're actually both extremely excited and extremely scared about
Yeah.
AI for some of the reasons that you talked about, right? I mean, you do absolutely want to protect your intellectual property. On the other hand, I can see huge benefits, huge productivity benefits, huge knowledge benefits. And so, I only touched on a couple of things that we're doing, but where we're going right now is we're trying to get as quickly as possible to this so-called natural language querying, the ability to ask questions. We build our products on databases. Those databases have a specific expectation about the way you're going to structure your questions. And so, our customers, any piece of software does it. I mean, Excel is the same way. You got to follow the rules of Excel. We want to get to the point, and we expect to be here in a written format by the end of this year, where you just ask the question the way you would ask, somebody standing next to you. Hey, I'm interested in understanding more about, how people upsold this month. The AI or the natural language query will allow you will translate all that into whatever format the underlying software needs, and that's probably our biggest focus on right now.
Yeah, that'll be
And
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It just takes all the friction out of the whole thing. It doesn't require expertise. Getting back to what you said, how do you get people to use it? Well, use it like you're talking to your neighbor or your spouse or somebody like that. And if you can get to that level, and you can get, correct results, of course, you need to get correct results,
Yes,
then you can do some great things.
that's amazing. Well, I love what you're doing. I know that you're making people more profitable, which is what we're all about here is helping people attain lives of sanity, wealth, and gratitude. We call that swag, Russ. So really getting a life of swag through business ownership, eliminating that friction to do more without having to do more. Right. So thank
Making
you so
customers
much.
happy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I said making customers happy is key to that too, right?
Percent, right? We always talk about that. If you really focus on serving, money will come. It's a
Sounds like
no-brainer,
sounds like
right? But I mean, it's easy as a small business owner to start to look at the money and wonder where the money's coming from and get focused on the money. And if you focus on serving people, you'll create loyal customers for life and the money will come.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are focused on our customers' success, and that's our number one objective. And as you say, if we do that, then the money will follow.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing the update after your next implementation of AI.
Well, thanks very much. I'll be happy to come back and report, April. It sounds like you're doing great work, and I'm excited to have been on, and I appreciate your time.
There we go. Thanks for tuning in to the Ask April Porter podcast. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow franchisees and small business owners. To access the resources I mentioned during this episode, check out our show notes.